Hello everyone, this is Admanityananda, and in his podcast, Self-enquiry and Meditation. Today's podcast is dedicated to self-enquiry and meditation. This is part 2. I want now to speak a little more about the practice, how we can practice self-enquiry and meditation. I have explained already that although self-enquiry and meditation are different ways to practice, their goal is the same: to rest effortlessly, deeply and steadily in our divine essence and experience peace, love, plenitude and freedom, eternal and infinite. So, and I have made clear that self-enquiry has also two other aspects of practice. The second one is to discern, using a process to discern the non-self of the real self or true self. And the third aspect is to inquire our tendencies, egoistic tendencies, and the functioning of mind and heart at all levels, and recognize, become aware, and understand how our mind functions, and understand how the tendencies function, and realize that we are not them, that they are intrusive, that function despite our will or against our will, and they mostly harm us or give us fleeting, pleasurable and pleasant experiences. So become more and more aware that we have to get rid of all of them, to liberate our psyche from all egoic tendencies. There is no other way to freedom, peace, plenitude, eternal and infinite. So how we can practice self-enquiry? As I said here, I will focus only in the first aspect. Self-enquiry has three aspects. I will focus only in the aspect, in the original, we could say, aspect that we use this method to get and to focus our mind in the inner silence and get deeper and deeper in the silence and establish ourselves in the silence. And also recognize that we are the silence. So the main method is what very well known by Ramana Maharshi, a great sage of India, using the question, who am I? And also using every thought or emotion that arises in us to make the question and turn our attention fully in the inner towards our source, the inner silence. And I will use some words of this great sage of India, Ramana Maharshi. First of all, self-enquiry, says Ramana, is the process and the goal also, and also the goal. I am is the goal and the final reality. We see here that, okay, I will read it and then I will make some commentaries. Self-enquiry is the process and the goal as well. I am is the goal and the final reality. That means I am refers to our true self, the divine essence, Atman in Sanskrit, Atman, Brahman. To hold to it, to the inner self, with effort is self-enquiry. When spontaneous and natural, it is realization or self-realization. These small phrases, these 2-3 phrases or 4 phrases of Ramana Maharshi make clear many things. But before going in it, I will dig in it. I would like to speak a little about I am. Now, Jagadhara Maharaj is very clear. He's made very clear that we are not this sense I am. But Ramana Maharshi have used this I am, sense I am, or also this rare term I, to refer to our true nature. I'm more with Nisargadatta's approach, that we are not this I am and not I. Because I is English words, or aham in Sanskrit are Sanskrit word, or English word is English word, Sanskrit word. So if I'm Greek, as I'm Greek, I don't know this I, so this I is myself. No way. What we are is beyond words. It is not I am, neither I, nor I, nor anything we can put in words or mental construct. It's beyond. This sense of I would say, this sense of I is something we sense. Ourself is beyond any sense. Why Maharishi used these words? I don't know. Because it's so subtle, this inner state is so subtle, and our inner self is so subtle, so words cannot help much. So he wanted to use these words in order to refer to the self which is beyond any definition. Okay, if we understand what he want the teachers to refer, it's okay. But it can confuse us a little bit. For example, in my case, I was a little bit confused with Nisargadatta. I have read a lot of Nisargadatta Maharaj, a lot of books, but especially I have studied very much, and reflect and contemplate on his words in the book that we can find in the book I Am That. And through this reflection and contemplation, awakening happened in my case. But I have difficulty because Nisargadatta used the words consciousness and awareness in a very specific way. And sometimes in some of his words or phrases, I could not understand what really he wants to say. I admit. And still, I don't know now because I have there is much time I don't read anymore of this book. I don't need. That's why. But according to what I remember when I was reading the words of Maharaj, there were some parts in the book I Am That I couldn't understand what he wanted to say about consciousness. But I stayed to what most of the time Nisargadatta have referred in relation to consciousness, to our true nature. So, despite of these difficulties I had, awakening happened. So, what I'm going to say here is that don't stuck too much in the words. The point is to understand what the words refer to. It's like this proverb, how they say this saying. Don't look at the finger that points to the moon, but be aware of the moon itself, because the teacher wants to show us the moon, but instead of focusing on the moon, we focus on the finger. So the words are the figures through which the teacher or the teaching want to help us to realize the moon, that is the true self. So when the words make their job, forget the words. Okay, you can use any term if you like, because as I said, it's difficult to speak about our true nature since it is very subtle and beyond any definition. So we can say that is I am, but what does it mean I am? This is the most crucial point. To have a code to communicate the words. So if we mean the same thing with the sense I am, it's okay. We can use the words as we want in order to facilitate this process. But the point is to understand the same thing using I am or consciousness or awareness or whatever. So if you use these words and we mean the same thing, we give them to the same meaning or connotation, it's okay. But for you, I am, it's related to this absolute silence of the self. And for me, I am is this sense I am, which is only a representation or a reflection of this inner silence. We are lost. So, after this explanation, what says Maharishi very clearly? Self-inquiry is the process and the goal as well. That means, and explain this, when spontaneous, it's self-realization. When it is, what is the goal? The goal is to remain fully aware and deeply fully aware in the silence. And when this, to hold on the self, needs some kind of effort, even though very subtle effort, then we speak about self-inquiry as a practice, as a process. And when this abundance becomes natural and spontaneous, is realization. But here, probably because this is a phrase that has been taken from a greater text, but means that realization means that we never anymore are distracted from this abundance in the self. There is nothing to distract us. That means that also the egoic tendencies have been dissolved totally. So we need more knowledge, understanding and experience, of course, to understand in depth what Maharishi says here. So the same applies to meditation. When we keep our mind in the inner silence using the mantra or the breathing process, or focusing on the chakras, eye chakra, third eye chakra, for example. And with this concentration, we connect with the inner silence. And as we connect with the silence, and this point of concentration loses, in the beginning, it is in the foreground. The concentration on the mantra, it is in the foreground, and the silence is the background. But by continuous concentration on the mantra, the mind at all levels, emotionally, thinking mind, subconscious mind, become calmer and more serene. And the more serene becomes our mind, the more subtle becomes also the way we say the mantra, and the more obvious becomes the silence. So the silence becomes more, comes to the foreground. And we could say that the mantra occupies a very small place in this infinite space of awareness. It's like to be in a room, and in the beginning we have many things in the room, and then one by one we throw out all these things. So the space in the room increases, the empty space increases and increases more and more. And when remains only one object in the room, so there is space and this small object. Let's say, what could be? A very small object, what could be? I don't know. Now nothing comes in my mind. Okay, whatever. It's like this. It's in the beginning we try to concentrate on the mantra, and then together appear different kind of thoughts, and though we every time our mind attention goes it is attracted to the thoughts, we become conscious of it and then turn back our mind and attention to the mantra, and little by little the thoughts become less and less, and only the mantra appears in our awareness. And the mantra, when this focus happens, means that the whole system, our psyche, becomes calmer and calmer, more calm, doesn't create any more emotions and thoughts and imaginations to distract us. And that means that the more assumes its sattvic mode of function or state, the sattvic state. And in this sattvic state of mind, the silence, the inner silence, becomes more and more obvious. the more our minds, heart become calm and serene and relaxed, a deep relaxation, inner relaxation, not of the body, but relaxation of heart and mind, then the more obvious becomes the silence, and the mantra occupies only a very small part of this inner space of silence. And when our concentration becomes steady and strong, we could say, then the mantra, and we get more and more in the silence, that the mantra stops by itself. We can also to decide to do this at some point, but if we really get deeply in the silence, then the mantra stops by itself. And this is also something that Ramana Maharshi has said sometime. That the mantra, and I think this quote, I have this quote of Maharshi in my book, that at the end, meditation with mantra results to the automatical, how to say, there is a fade out of the mantra, disappears, without doing anything about it. Because our absorption to the silence is so deep, it's very deep. And after some point, we cannot have thoughts. That's why I said in the previous part that the deeper we get in the silence, the easier for us is to remain there, and it becomes very difficult for our ego to use our mind to create thoughts and emotions and distract us from the silence. This is the critical point. That's why Ramana Maharshi said in a question, I have here this question, what is not attachment? As Ramana says, as thoughts arise, the same applies to, of course, to emotions, destroying them utterly without any residue, I don't know this word, how to pronounce this word, residue, in the very place of their origin is not attachment. What that say here, Maharshi, that attachment is to destroy any thought or emotion that arises totally without remaining any residue of this emotion or thoughts in the very place of the origin, like the very moment that arise them in us. To stop them, and of course not identify with them, because if we identify with them, then we give them the power and they express forcefully in us, and our mind attention attach on them and lose ourselves on them. So non-attachment in its very higher, we could say, expression is to destroy emotions, destroy in the means that to make them subside the very moment they arise and avoid any kind of identification, to avoid any discussion with them. This is a very high state. But this is what is required. And this is the really meaning of self-enquiry that Ramana Maharshi has spoken. And meditation is like this also. When we are with the help of a mantra, we are deeply connected with the silence. We are in a position to very quickly see the first movement of thought or of emotion and be aware of this movement. And so that by doing something that can be just paying more attention in the silence, to not give them any opportunity to continue their expression and their expression to become strong and to attract our attention and our interest and become entangled ourselves with them and make stories. In reality, this is to die moment by moment. And this is what Ramana Maharshi says this, we must practice it during the seated practices at home, but also moment to moment. This is devotion to spiritual life, but devotion most of all to our true self. This is real devotion. to abide steadily and deeply in our divine essence, and don't lose this abundance by any means. And the better way to maintain this self-awareness is to destroy, as Maharishi says, utterly the thoughts and emotions that arise in us the very moment, in the very place that arise. If you are very careful, you can see from where emotion arise. It needs a very high capacity of awareness, attention, discernment, and clear perception, our mind to be clear. So we can clearly see when and where this first movement of mostly of emotion happens, or from where the thoughts arise. And by becoming so quickly aware of their manifestation, we are in a position, very powerful position, to avoid any identification and make them subside. However, to have so deep connection with silence and this capacity to become aware of their manifestation the very moment they arise in us, it is a very high state. We are yogis, to say it in the yoga language. You are yogis. It's not so easy. Or we can do this for some brief periods of time during seated meditation. Okay, but to do this constantly, it's only for advanced practitioners. That's why Ramana Maharshi and other great teachers have said that only a pure sattvic mind can do, or people having a pure sattvic mind can do really self-enquiry and meditation. Of course, as I said, we can practice them from the very beginning, but to really meditate and really do self-enquiry, it is needed a very great progress related to purification of mind, increasing of sattva quality in the mind, increase in development of sattvic qualities and virtues, of self-awareness, etc. Devotion, dispassion, discernment, concentration, steadiness are of the most important qualities to maintain a deep, steady, and effortless connection with our true self, and live more and more the peace, plenitude, and freedom of our true selves, and less the misery and the pain and suffering created by our egoic identity, illusory identity, all ego and all tendencies of the ego in the form of gluttony, lust, pride, fear, anger, jealousy, greed, avarice, impatience, etc. So, how Maharishi say we can use this self-enquiry? We can use question. How will the mind become quiescent? By the inquiry, who am I? The thought, who am I, will destroy all other thoughts, and like the stick used for stirring the burning fire, it will itself in the end get destroyed. Then there will arise self-realization. So using this question, who am I, we can destroy all other thoughts. That means that we don't give them the room to express themselves and make us identify with them and make stories. And in this way to strengthen all tendencies and this habit to think in without a break, and attached to this and attached to the emotions related to thinking and sensory objects, etc., etc. What is the means for constantly holding on to the thought, who am I? And now explains, okay, the who am I, we ask and get and turn our attention in ourselves, in the center of our existence, to the place, into the place where there is this, is experienced this inner silence. But because, as I said, many thoughts arises and emotion arises in us due to habit, to the force of habit, and due to they are very strong. So he says, Maharishi, when other thoughts, as well emotions, I say, arise in us, while one should not pursue them, but should inquire, to whom do they arise? So we must not fight these emotions or thoughts to stop them. Just we take away our attention, withdraw our attention from them, and we put our attention fully to the question, to whom do they arise? To whom these thoughts or these emotions or this emotion arise? It does not matter how many thoughts arise. As each thought arises, one should inquire with diligence. To whom has this thought arisen? The answer that would emerge would be, to me. Thereupon, if one inquires, who am I, the mind will go back to its source, and the thought that arose will become quiescent, will subside. So, we begin to ask ourselves, who am I, and pay fully attention in ourselves and deepen in ourselves, going deeper and deeper in this abstract, vague space of silence, and maintain our mind in this silence. And every time something distracts us from this concentration, focusing on the silence, we ask, to whom this thought arise? If it was a thought, to whom this thought have arisen? To whom this emotion have arisen? Or if it is that the body attracts our attention and we feel fully the body, to whom this sensation of the body has arisen? To me. The answer is always to me. Who am I? Another way, this is explained by Maharishi in another occasion. What is the source of this I? To me. What is the source? To me means to I, to ego. What is the source of this me or I? So every time that we become aware of anything, in the case of thoughts, that means the thoughts has arising. That's why we are aware of thoughts, or of emotions, or imaginations, or sensory. We have a sensory experience. For example, we hear something from outside of our room. Then, to whom this sensory experience has arisen? To me. Who am I? We don't fight to stop this experience, sensory experience, or thought experience, or emotion experience. We are going to fail. And the point is that we give more power to it, because when we fight something like this, we give more power to it, because we give it more importance. So if we withdraw our attention from this experience and we put our attention to the question, and questions mysteriously, I could say, have a great power and help us to withdraw our attention from the experience, psychological or sensory experience, and our attention naturally and effortlessly go focus to what we ask. To whom this thought has arisen? To me. And very naturally, because we give interest. This, I think this is the most crucial factor. We give interest to this. Of course, if the tendency is very strong, like in the case of lust, and wants to experience pleasure, it's not so easy. That's why this is possible to practice this quite constantly, effectively. It is needed to have, we must have a pure sattvic, luminous mind. If the tendency is like lust, for example, is very strong, then after some time, lust wants pleasure. So, and the lust seeks for opportunities to lose a little bit our concentration, and then very easily express itself. And since it is very seductive, we like this and want to experience this pleasure. And though this silence, since we cannot also experience deeply the peace and profoundly and deeply and plentifully this peace and plenitude. So a very dry silence in front of a very sweet pleasure doesn't make much. So we are very easily attached to this sense of pleasure, and we go very easily, we give in very easily and go to fulfill this and have this pleasure, which will last very little and will create a lot of pain. But who cares about pain and suffering at that moment? What cares for the ego is this pleasure. This pleasure is the paradise. It's the whole universe. We are lost. Why? Because lust is very strong. Rajas and tamas qualities are very strong. And we are prey to these qualities, rajas and tamas, and we are prey to lust. It takes a lot of time to... Because what Maharshi says here is very simple, but it's not so easy to practice. That's why he said also that only practitioners with a very pure sattvic mind can practice really self-enquiry. The rest must practice other practice, devotion, mantras, etc. But this also has said Maharshi, in India, in India of 1930s or 1950s or 1920s, where purity was more prevalent than now, and especially in the Western world, which is full of lust and rajas and tamas. So what advices have given by Maharshi, or what advices Maharshi have given, are related to the place and the time and the people he had around him. So, but unfortunately, Western people take them, literally, and they don't understand what I have been in India for 10 years, between 2002 to 2011. And the India of 2002 to 2011 has nothing to do with the India of 90, 10, 20, 30, the first half of the 20th century. It has nothing to do with the India of 21st century or the end of 22nd century. It has nothing to do. Believe me. Even though the India of today, in some places, especially, it's much different than now. Now, I think not so much. Because materialism and sensualism has been exported to all countries from the West. We have contaminated with the materialism point of living, way of living, all countries. And it is easier to go down than to go up. It is easier to give in to the senses and the pleasures of the senses than to go against them, to restrain these impulses, urges to fulfill the senses and the pleasure of the senses. So that's why, especially for the masses, for the majority of the people who live in ignorance, it's easier for them to lose themselves in the sense pleasures than to make an effort to purify their mind and hearts and get in touch with the purity of the self. This is what is reality. That's why we have to prepare ourselves to practice self-enquiry. the mind will go back to its source, and the thought that arose will become quiescent. With repeated practice in this manner, the mind will develop the skill to stay in its source. So it is a matter like to strengthen our muscles. We repeat the same exercises. We lift weights, for example, again and again every day. So our muscles become stronger and stronger. And the capacity to lift more weight increases. The same happens with this process. Our mind, attention are distracted, and we bring back them to the silence again and again, again and again. The same says Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says to Arjuna, every time your attention and mind distracts from the silence, bringing back the mind to the silence. Or says to the divine being or divine self, whatever. There is no other way. All great teachers have said this. This is the main practice, to withdraw our mind and attention from all other experiences and bring it back to the self, to the inner silence. That means to the inner silence, deeply as possible. And being indifferent from any experience. That's why we have to develop dispassion, to be indifferent for any other experience. Because due to conditioning, which is the desires in reality of ego, we are interested about pleasures and in general sensory experiences. So the stronger are the desires for sensory pleasure, the weaker is the desire in the rest to remain in the silence. Because especially in the beginning means many years, we do not experience a deep bliss and plenitude. So for our conditioned mind, pleasures appear more attractive, alluring, and easily we give in to again and again to fulfill them. And that's why we maintain the tendencies strong in us. And if the tendency remains strong in us, we cannot ever experience the peace and the plenitude and the bliss of our true self, because they create a very low vibrational frequency that prevents us from experiencing clearly and deeply the peace and plenitude. It's like a cloud. All tendencies have a vibrational, energetic vibrational field that functions as a cloud that covers the peace and bliss. And cloud our mind and intellect, and because of it they cannot have clear perception, or we cannot have clear perception of the inner silence. That's why it is not so easy to get rid of all conditioning, because we are so attached to the pleasures. This is the main problem. And we are also attached to our identity. I'm very special, unique, the best of the world. So if we want to practice this self-enquiry as Ramana Maharshi recommends, we must purify our minds and hearts through a spiritual way of living, a sattvic way of living, and practice steadily with devotion at home, morning and night, and throughout all day. Make our best and pass much time in nature, and pass much time in solitude, and pass much time in practicing in sacred places like the ashrams of Ramana Maharshi, of Harakam Babaji, of Swami Sivananda. And that means to withdraw from sensory experience that we experience constantly in our places. This is a necessity. We cannot get rid of all these attachments if we don't live for long periods of time in solitude, and especially in high vibrational places. There is no way. Although some modern teachers say that you don't need to go anywhere, just practice. No, it's not the truth. No. You cannot. This is my experience. You cannot. For 10 years I was practicing while I was living in Athens. And very little things have changed in my psyche and in my awareness. And when I started to pass much time in the ashram of Babaji, of Sivananda and Maharshi, and practice in very high vibrational frequency field of energy, my life changed in some years. These years from 2002 to 2011, and when I went back to my home, I was living in solitude. I have no anymore relationships and friends and all these things. So my job, and then my whole time, it was dedicated to practice. And of course, when I was working also, I was practicing as well. Mantra, most of all. Mantra, self-observation, non-attachment, and prayer. And then all the rest of the time I was mostly engaged in some kind of practice. And that way my life has changed. And that way I have achieved a very radical transformation. And because of this, in my case, at least awakening happens. It's not by chance. It doesn't happen by chance. So this is what I wanted to say about the self-enquiry, as Maharshi with his words have explained, and continues. And I have no time to speak about meditation. I will stop here. Not letting the mind go out by retaining in the heart, in the inner space of silence, is what is called inwardness. Letting the mind go out of the heart is known as externalization. Thus, when the mind stays in the heart, the I, the ego, which is the source of all thoughts, will go, and the self, which ever exists, will shine. Whatever one does, one should do without the egoity I. That means that we can also maintain this inwardness of the mind and the I to be totally subside. If one acts in that way, all will appear as the nature of Shiva or God. In India, they have many names for this absolute consciousness. Shiva, God, Narayana, Krishna, Vasudevaya, it's Krishna. How they say, Maheshvara, Purusha, Paramatman, Parabrahman, I don't know, many names, but the same reality. This empty space of consciousness, of formless, timeless, causeless, existent consciousness. This is what I wanted to share with you. I wish you peace, love, and light in your heart. I wish you to continue your practice and continue your practice more intensively and steadily and effectively, and realize your true nature in this very life, and live more and more the peace and bliss and freedom you are, and less the misery and pain and suffering created by your egoic self. Get rid of this egoic self. Realize what really is this ego, and dissolve by means of meditation, self-enquiry, mantras, prayer, and devotion, and attain freedom in this very life. I send you my love, and I wish you a very good day, very nice day, wherever you are, or very nice night, wherever you are. Namaste.